Okay, so this is a panel that's coordinated and sponsored by Asian American Alliance of Marin and the Dominican Census Initiative. Okay, so those of you who are in the 2 classes that are part of the initiative, this is why we're doing this discussion, and the focus of the discussion is on the specifically minority. Okay, and we have these excellent panelists who are here with us. I actually have a slide for them, but before that, I want to get back to you guys who just watched the documentary. What are some thoughts or if you have questions about the Asian American stereotypes? What were you thinking while you were watching them? The first one, what do you think all of you? It does document a really long history of these stereotypes. What kind of question? First at first, and then now.
Okay. So I thought it was very interesting from both, like you did say, it was a little dated, but I'm interested in seeing, or like, hearing more, or like just my general thoughts of how, in general, the Asian American stereotype has transformed with the new age, with each generation, it continually transforms and evolves. Like, I guess some comparable movies would now be like Fresh Off the Boat, how they're working on possibly like changing the narrative or changing that stereotype of being fresh off the boat. So I think like I'm wondering what are the impacts now? Is it much harder to see? I mean, a lot of that does have to do with where you live too. Like I'm sure a lot of the things that we saw in the video, as dated as it is here in California, maybe it's still prevalent in the South, but like here it makes it much harder to relate to, just because like at least in my personal experience I haven't seen that, but then I have gotten, I think there was a scene that was like, oh, how do you, your English is so good. And it's like, I've gotten that. Yeah, and I'm like, well, I hope so. I was born here. I didn't say that, but like it makes it very interesting to kind of explore that realm in terms of like how the Asian American stereotype has evolved. And it's not gone away.
No, and that's why even the 1988 one is kind of still relevant.
So observations about how they depict men versus women in movies. Men is very nerdy. Asian men very nerdy. Not a lot of people are attractive, but Asian woman is typically more very exotic, and people very attracted to them, and it's totally different. My question is, have you, the panel, ever experienced that type of stereotype toward you, or do you know like any family members that experience that?
Maybe both that, because that's the first question that we have in our discussions about it. Okay. I want to hear from the rest of you, because we planted those too. We completely just did. So, what are the other ones? What are your thoughts? Yes, please.
I thought it was interesting in the first documentary how a lot of the stereotypes towards Asian was on women, and I feel like my generation is more on men, because I guess I wasn't really like exposed to that when I was younger, because more Asian women are like seen more in films now, and now the stereotype is like Asian men are doctors or like really smart. So I thought that was interesting to see how it's transformed, over a few generations.
That's a really good observation. Okay. Other thoughts? One more person who's great. It's not good. Okay.
My biggest thought, as an Asian American person, I was just thinking about how, like, for these people that are in Hollywood, how it affects them on a personal level. Like going out the world and how these stereotypes are, projected onto you, and then you start to take them and internalize them, and then all of a sudden you place these stereotypes in yourself, and you're like, yes, I am that nerdy Asian person that gets straight A's all the time, and then how that affects them psychologically over the years, and how, like, all of a sudden when you don't fit into that model, the effects that it has on you and your identity. So I thought that was really well shown that all these people that we've seen on TV talking about model minority, and I really like to hear more about.
Or even a dancer, if you don't do
Yeah.
ballet,
Yeah.
that's not good enough to kind of dance.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
Okay, I have one more from Marcia.
Could I add on top of that, or in addition to everything that everyone said, also exploring, it was mentioned a bit in the documentaries, between like being Asian American and also being a female, and the intersectionality between those two, how it affects like the way you grew up and the way how you navigate the world.
Yeah, that's a really good thought to keep in mind too. Discussion. So I'm going to move on and hold your other thoughts because we have people who are very knowledgeable. I have all the names of our panelists, and I'm a faculty. So what I'll do is I'll actually have our panelists introduce themselves. The types of communities that they work with, and in their professional capacities, because this is a community knowledge session, and we're really tapping on their knowledge and wisdom and their understanding and experiences with the community that they work with, especially in the context of not schools. So if we could start with maybe on Beverly, if you could introduce yourself to us and answer the question. What's your professional specialty and what communities you work with?
Okay, I'm Beverly Matsuishi. I actually started out a teacher because that's all a woman could become. When I went to college, they even wondered would they ever hire a Japanese teacher in a public school, because I'm of the generation where most of my family, I was born after the war, but everybody who was Japanese American was in an internment camp for 3 years. And then they were homeless, 120,000 people got let go with no money and no place to go and no internet and no iPhones. So that's where I come from. I became a teacher. I quit teaching. I raised my daughter and a couple of foster kids. And then I went back, actually to Dominican.
Oh.
Yeah. I got a master's from Dominican. Yay, Dominican. Because I live in the neighborhood. And I got a master's in special ed. I went to work up at the Med Center, and I would work as a special ed teacher all day with these kids. And physicians would come in and talk to my kid for 15 minutes and decide what to do about them. And I'd been there all day. And they gave me 2 seconds to tell what I thought. And then I thought, I either have to become a physician or a psychologist. Because they're not going to listen to me. Because as a woman and a woman of color, unless I've got a degree, then it doesn't matter, I think. So I went back, I got a PhD in clinical psychology. I won a couple of awards, and I got to be a visiting scholar in China at Hunan University Medical Center. I came back, and then my daughter, who was a filmmaker, came home, and we decided that the way the Japanese went to, you were talking about the model minority, because we were the most, I used to go and wait for a bus and get spit on, literally, at a bus stop. And we went from that person to the model minority in about 15 years. And I always thought the Americans did that so they didn't have to own up to what they'd done to us. They cleaned it all up. But anyway, I went, and when I got my degree in psychology, I decided the Southeast Asians were here and they were stuck the same way we were. And we decided the way to get out of this is education, guys, right? So my daughter and I are next generation scholars. We send kids from the canal and from urban city to 4-year colleges and universities on full financial aid. And we do it the same way Japanese Americans got out of poverty. And that's sorry.
Does anybody done serving with NGS?
Can I ask a question? You said you did it the same way Japanese Americans left poverty behind.
Yes.
Could you give me some more detail on that?
Sure. After the war, all we could be was housekeepers and gardeners. Japanese gardeners is a term, right? And so I used to clean houses with my grandmother. And we just couldn't get, the only neighborhood we could live in particularly was African American neighborhoods because they were the only people that would rent to us. We couldn't get jobs. But if we went to college and let time go by, because I'm Buddhist, so everything's impermanent. So if enough time went by, we would be prepared for a different time. And that's how we got out of poverty. So I don't clean houses
Through
anymore.
education.
Yeah, we educated each other, and we went to college in a group. We're not big individual kind of people. We sort of hung out in college together underneath this one tree at UC Berkeley. And that's how we got each other through.
Yeah, see, because my mother is Chinese,
Mhm.
and I think Chinese did a similar thing.
Mhm.
I know my grandfather was like a numbers runner because nobody would hire him for anything, so he had to be a gangster. And he focused on education for his children. He died young, but they got education. And my father is African American. Now, it's been over 400 years, and we still haven't escaped. And they still don't want to own up to what they've done in that arena either. But I do notice Asians have being from both. I watched my mother. She did have a very Buddhist way. Keep your head down, keep on navigating, keep on going, and move toward your goal. And eventually she emerged and she was successful. On the other side, my father's people have a burden of, they just are not able to navigate like that. And I see in my own personal family, people have chosen one navigation over no navigation, and the success follows. So it's just it's very oppressive in terms of the whole narrative with you're expected to present in a certain way. You're Asian, you're a woman, and the worst thing I've seen is, but it's not really worse, but I've seen a lot of Asian women navigating behind the scenes for their own personal success, for their family's personal success, yet presenting as if demure, don't want to make any trouble, not going to make any waves, but they get it done in the backyard. That's what I've noticed.
Yeah, so hold that example in mind too, because that's very relevant to then how the law of minority benefits is enforced, right? Because from personal experiences, people do have these narratives of what seems like the pattern, and that's. But I'm gonna move on to Sue. Have you introduce yourself?
So anyway, yeah, my name is Sue Lee. And they have it all, Sue Lee, whatever. And there's stories behind my name as well. But so my background was actually I started out teaching too, and it was like ever since I was young. And I don't know why I wanted to be a teacher because I grew up in Chinatown, San Francisco. So the schools were like 99%, Chinese students and 99% white teachers, female teachers. So there was really no role model there, but somehow I wanted to be a teacher maybe because I wanted to be a different role model. And when I was teaching in San Francisco, I started out with ESL, so there was a lot of immigrant students learning English, and then I went on to what I call the first public charter school, which was put together by parents who came out of the programs where they were parent involvement schools. But anyway, it was a very diverse school in terms of student population and in terms of teachers and faculty. And what I felt in there was I wanted to deal with the whole child. And the school that I was at allowed that, but somehow you felt you didn't have enough energy or resources to deal with the whole child, So then I ended up going into social work and had an internship at the same place that Beverly was, Richmond Maxi Center, and I also did a year with Easter Seals with developmental disabilities. And after that, I did a year of mental health over in the East Bay, and then I ended up in the community college, which I never thought I would end up in a college setting working with adults. I just thought I would work with kids and families. And when I got hired, it was actually another social worker that gave me my position and said, you're going to be frontline in seeing these immigrant students coming for school. So, you're going to act in many ways as a social worker. And in many ways I did. I don't want to go through some of the other stuff because that won't answer some of the other questions.
Okay.
So I'll just kind of reserve that. So my background has been a lot with me growing up in Chinatown and returning to the Chinatown, serving that community.
And Tran.
My name is Chen Lin. I'm a psychologist for Orange County Behavioral Health. And this is my first career being a psychologist. And this video actually resonated with me because I'm of that generation. Some of my classmates were in that video. This is my generation. YouTube.com came out when I was in college. And I remember, like, this resonated. I'm like, hey, I remember those YouTubers. Like, that's what I grew up with. And I remember, so the mom minority myth really hit home with me because when I was going to college, I was like this next generation of people exposed to the internet. So I was like the first generation with a laptop. So my cohort, so it was like this next generation of like, what are we gonna go to next with like the mom minority myth. But I remember my first time seeing an Asian American like video. It was before YouTube. And how you would download it is you would actually have a USB stick that people would spread around. So they'll be like, here's this cool video with some Asian American people. And I'm like, wait, I have to wait my turn. So you would literally pass around this USB to like share videos. So I feel like technology has really helped like spread information, and it's easy to watch YouTube videos. But back in the day, Wonky Production was on a USB stick. The very first video, because that's how we watched it. We like heard about it, and we would like run to that person who had a USB stick to like watch it.
Yeah, can you tell us about the community that you work with?
So I specialize in adults with severe mental illness. So we work in the county, the Medi-Cal population, and very specifically I work with monolingual Vietnamese speaking adults with severe mental illness.
So we will ask Tran more about that in a little bit. And so just to ground our conversation, just to make sure that we're talking about the same thing, I have a definition for mono-minority for those of you who are new to this term. Very general definition, it's a stereotype that certain demographics amongst ethnic minorities are just better informed in terms of socioeconomic achievement, right? Therefore, the lawyers and doctors and no less. And so that's what we're working with. But and one of the questions I asked the panelists is that I think mono-minority as a stereotype really has both positive and negative effects. So I do want to address both, right? So how has it positively affected people? How have it negatively? And also, you all have said a little bit of some of that oppressive nature of this stereotype, and so that's something that I want to keep in mind in our discussion. And in terms of characteristics, we see that a lot in the countries that we just watched. And so think of those examples a little bit. And so I gave the panelists 3 questions, and so they're like, okay, super prepared. So good for them, with tiny little and so this is what I asked, in your personal upbringing, how has the idea of that minority affected them? And so if you haven't said enough, some examples, you still have some examples to share.
So I want to respond to it because actually, I think the first time I heard the word Asian as being non-minority is probably when I went to college. And started taking psychology classes and stuff because we didn't have ethnic studies classes in high school or anything like that. And I don't think I ever saw myself as a modern minority. My own upbringing too is, I'm starting to tell people that I might have been one of the first dreamers because my father came over as a paper son, so he was a Uyghur. And then I came over from China under that same falsehood with a different last name. That's why I said I have a very interesting story behind the last name. And so we weren't really rich, but my parents said we weren't really poor. Although I will say some of the things we ate, salt with oil over rice, I figured we didn't have anything else to eat, but my mom would say, no, you guys like that food. But, so, and I think that they worked so hard. My mother worked in a sewing factory, and my father had worked in a government job in the post office until he confessed that he came under false pretenses, and then they took his citizenship away, and therefore he couldn't work for the post office at that time. You had to be a citizen. But anyway, we went through all of that, and my brother ended up going to UC Berkeley, and I figured my parents would not let me move to to go to Berkeley because they wanted their daughter to stay at home. So I went to state and became a teacher. So anyway, I learned about, the term of model minority. And again, I didn't think I saw myself as that because I have the same reaction. People will always say to me, you don't have a Chinatown accent, but you grew up in Chinatown, and I went to Chinese school and stuff like that. And it didn't seem unusual to me, but I know that everybody else maybe had different accents because we spoke Chinese and that was okay. But I think that when I went to Lowell High School, and at that time it was not quite like what it is now. It was just very few Asians. I could count on the hands of friends of mine that went with me to Lowell. I'm glad that there wasn't that pressure for me to follow that identity of being a model minority, because I felt pretty small anyway. I went into this school and it was a culture shock. You leave Chinatown, and San Francisco has microclimate. So when you go through the Twin Peaks Tunnel and you come out and it's foggy, and the houses are like separated and they're one story, and you come from congested, dense Chinatown, it was a real culture shock. And I walked through the halls of the high school, and it's a huge building, and I'm so short, and everybody's tall and smart and wealthy. Yeah, so it was hard for me to even feel like I could be on that level with them. And if they put this stereotype of a model minority, that would have been super pressure for me.
But I think you two are kind of the model for the model minority of our generation.
Because of your success stories, then so I think that internalized oppression is a lot more on our generation because you actually do more than that.
Actually, there was a problem because I was at Lowell leaving Manchester. This is pretty strange. But the thing that, because I knew about the model minority, and in a way, okay, it made me feel a little cleaner. I didn't have to be so ashamed of myself. But the problem was that we're not all model minorities. And what it did to some of my friends who didn't fit that stereotype, it was very oppressive to them. And because suddenly they were supposed to be this thing and change identities and do well in school, and they were just average kids. And some did well and some didn't. And I think it was very, very difficult for a lot of the people I knew when I was a teenager.
Yeah, so then from that, what I'm hearing is that for at least 3-4 generations, the model minority is really internalized and oppressive. At least 3-4 generations. Because you said about 15 years that there's that transition where the model minority has kind of kicks in. So.
But I don't think anybody who didn't fit the model minority in the sense that they weren't that successful is going to say that the model minority was unfair to them, because it was a source of shame. Suddenly this thing is there.
Do you remember which 15 years that was that you felt that transition?
And the only thing that I felt is, okay, we're all Japanese Americans, we're all in San Francisco. Some of us went to UC, a few went to Stanford, but nobody went to Eastern, or nobody, I don't think, came here even. But some of us went to UC, and some of the other kids didn't. We were never friends again. It was just made a difference. I don't know how to explain it, but I always felt that the model minority thing had something to do with what happened.
I think that has something to do with also cultural issue, because your parents emphasized I came from the family of the Christians. However, Confucianism is very basic, Buddhism was basic, ingrained in our everyday life, even though Christianity is there. So still to this day, when I see the Korean movies nowadays, I'm shocked how a woman is really out there. We are not being taught like that. We were like, oh, you have to be quiet. You know, you're the girl, so you have to be restrained. You don't tell your opinions in public. But nowadays it's different. So I was like, oh wow, that's really different when I see Korean TV especially. So like, they're really different. So there's cultural issues really ingrained.
So there's that intersectionality between, there's some sort of silencing that already came with Asian culture.
Without, yeah,
Yes, and then there's that American experience in the history. So it's, actually several different things that come out.
Well, I worked on starting the Japanese reparations, and it actually, one of the groups started right here where we have over breakfast tables. And there were women who worked on it. John today, he's from Oxford. He ended up running it, but it was very difficult as a woman to stay in my own community. You've got to give up this model minority stuff, and we've got to re-bring up the internment camps. And they said, we don't want to do that. We're accepted. What they didn't say what, well, but they said something. But you've got to stop saying this and just let it go. And I said, no, we've got to get it through Congress. We've got to make the United States own this issue, right? Like slavery, you've got to own it and you've got to take responsibility. And frankly, you've got to pay us for this. And even though it was only $20,000, it was important that the country said it was wrong. But for women to come out and say that, I'm not very popular around my own community, really, because that's how I feel.
So actually additional layers of those obstacles.
So the model minority myth. So I am a second generation Vietnamese American. So my parents were refugees that came in the 70s. I'm one of the oldest second generation, so one of the first children born in the U.S. So I'm like on the older end of this cohort born in the U.S. And I remember the first time I heard the actual term model minority was in college, like an academic term. They're like teaching us the definition. And I remember looking, I'm like, what? Model minority. What do you mean? Like Asian Americans, like, go to college. These people don't go to college. Like, what are you talking about? And they were like, no, there's like the stereotype where like Asian Americans do well, so Vietnamese people do well too. And I'm like, what are you talking about? We have like the highest illiteracy rate. Like, what are you talking about? We don't go to UCs. We don't go to schools. I'm actually abnormal that I'm sitting in your class. And it's interesting for my generation is that we were imposed with this stereotype before we even had a chance to figure out if we could go to college or if we were successful in this country. So for my generation, we were told, oh, by the way, there's a stereotype that you do well. We're like, but our parents hadn't done well. We just got here. What are you talking about? So I think from like a Southeast Asian perspective, it's like, no. That stereotype came before we even got here. Like this was imposed on different Asian American groups and you're assuming and applying it to everyone else that comes later. And we're like, we were not included in any of that.
Well, I have a question about who the they is. Because, is it from the larger, broader, white American established society and then adopted by certain elements of each culture so that they then reimpose it on themselves? Because it seems to me, mother Chinese, father African American, I see from the 1600s how there have been societal, established institutions, corporations, education norm to prevent certain others from entering mainstream society. And it's real. Redlining, educational disadvantages in terms of where tax dollars go to support education in certain neighborhoods. And it's endemic, systemic, historical, but it seems to me, am I wrong? Am I just buying into this model minority? My mother's side, it's not that they escaped it, but they built tunnels under, built roads around, flew over. They have escaped that type of endemic historical, systemic put down. Am I wrong, or I don't, it's not equivalent.
Well, I think,
Not that it should be, but.
yeah. Well, I think also the term model minority came out for political reasons. Even the term came out from this article written in, I don't know what year, the 60s maybe. So it came from this
Civil rights
article.
movement.
Yes, where they were saying, oh, look at this group of ethnic minorities. They do well. But the problem with the model minorities is there's a problem minority, right? So it was really made to pitch ethnic groups against each other. To say,
Right.
this group's doing well, what about this group over here? Why aren't they doing well? And that was actually targeted at the black community at that
Yes.
time.
And that's
To say, yes, so it's basically saying, this group does well, so let's kind of, well, they did well, so they're fine. We're not setting a system to make them fail. They're just not doing well. So even that is a historical, there's a historical back into why this is happening. And in some ways it's led into like systemic issues where now people have, like I said, now this stereotype.
And I think it's a lot more subtle because there are definitely still systemic issues with Asians. Well, I mean, look at when we came through this last recession, the horrible financial institution activity. The only institution prosecuted for that, not successfully, was a Chinese bank in New York. Okay, and it started with, the Wall Street bankers of a Caucasian men. They all rode off into the sunset with their billion-dollar, severances, and our tax dollars helping them move along. The only bank was, and I can't remember the name of the bank, it was a Chinese family, they owned this bank, and they were the only ones. And they were since exonerated after they went broke defending themselves. But that's where the onus was put for the responsibility for that whole economic financial collapse and fiasco of the entire world. It reverberated around the world. Yet, it fell on this model minority.
But that's part of the characteristic of the minority
Yes.
is that the group is okay
Until-
building tunnels under
Until they need a fall guy.
Right, and then also okay with being silenced at times when somebody needs to take the blame or or whatever is convenient for us to do the Lunar New Year parade, right? So it's all part of the characteristics of being a minority is that it's not being the same as mainstream or the
It feels more like use and abuse, is what it feels like. How can we turn this narrative to always keep the onus off ourselves and put it elsewhere? Oh, look, those people are being good. According to whose definition?
I think it's made it very difficult for people of color or any community to bond with us because they've made us this thing. Because I know when we stopped working with Asians and we started working with the Latino community, we had to go into the community and earn their trust because we weren't seen as helpful people. And it was difficult, and I think that's one of the things. So long as we're all separate groups, we're easy to manage.
And manipulate.
Yeah.
The parallel that I could think of the minority niche in our society is sort of like the management group in a colonial setting, right? So you have the colonial masters, like over in Europe, and then you have this class of people who are just kind of the slave masters giving orders. And so there's sort of that parallel that's perceived here in America when people think of the minorities, and therefore there's that lack of trust a lot of times because people are like, we don't trust you.
Yeah, like you
You want to
somehow
help us.
you cooperated with this myth, and you're cooperating with the people of power, and we didn't do that. It happened to us.
Well, yeah,
No, go ahead.
And I think that the other thing that got in the way when we saw the Asian as model minority is then when they had all this affirmative action and said we're going to allow certain minorities or underprivileged people to get into better jobs or better schools or whatever, and it's like, oh, but we're excluding the Chinese or the Asians because you guys you've made it, so we're not in that category. But like Beverly said, not everybody, not all of us fit into that category, you know, and there was that pressure. And, you know, I was actually very surprised when I was working in the community college and we were working with adult immigrants learning English. And this is free programs for them. They're coming to learn English and training for jobs. And I actually had worked with, I think, 3 homeless Asians, 2 actually female and 1 male. And they have their own stories, but it almost like shocked me because I didn't think I would come across Asians who would be homeless. You know, again, you're thinking of, you know, we're the model minority, and even though these immigrants had very difficult lives and were struggling, the parents were encouraging the education, and they expected a lot, and they would work hard enough to want to maybe have extra money to give them extra tutoring, you know, because they wanted their kids to excel. So it still persists, you know, this notion of, you know, you're going to succeed.
I would much like to the second questions. I think we're starting to address some of these. It's, you know, how the idea has affected the community very more closely. So I think you're starting to get there. So I, you know, if you have examples of how this has impacted the community. And I know Tran has told me a lot about the community that you work with. So if we could kind of start with Tran.
I think so I work for the county. It's actually affected the Asian American community negatively because when they do kind of like focus group to figure out what communities need a lot of help, Asian Americans really are not identified as a community that needs help. And when they run the statistics of like how many clients go through our system, who's utilizing services, when they see that it's a small number of Asian American clients, they'll say, see, they're fine. Instead of saying, maybe we're not outreaching, or maybe they don't want services. The narrative is actually, they're fine, see, the percentage is so low, like, they're doing good. Next. So a lot of the community actually gets overlooked. And then services are not offered in different languages because they think everyone's fine. They kind of don't actually outreach to the Asian American communities because they think they're fine. We don't need to send out more people to outreach. We don't need to send people out to do psychoeducation. And it also actually affects us in the professional setting as well. There's less need for them to hire Asian American psychologists or therapists because they say we don't need them. We're not serving Asian Americans, so there's no need to recruit for more. So it's, you know, kind of just like singular. So like there's less staffing, then we don't recruit, and then we don't outreach, and then there's just no one in our clinic. So, and then also on a professional level, I have a Black coworker who is the most, Nick knows him, he's like the most polite person, and a lot of it is he has to act very nice and very friendly so he doesn't come off as aggressive. On our team, I'm actually way more aggressive than he is. I'm like, no, like, it's not working, I don't like it. But our feedback at the end of the year is always that he's aggressive, even though he's like the politest person, and he's purposely not trying to be confrontation at all. And I'm just like over here saying, hey, I don't like you. I don't like what you're doing. And my feedback is always like, oh yeah, you know, Tran is very positive. And I'm not positive, I'm just negative personality. But our evals really reflect that. And it actually has an impact on the way we can move ahead in our career, right? Someone's aggressive and she's very positive. When in reality, I'm the aggressive one. And so that actually shows up on a professional level as well, and how people treat us and how they talk to us.
So I kind of have the same question again. So who's doing these evaluations? I mean, you know, and from those you can see, like you said, a cyclical, unconscious bias that is ensconced in a way they, your supervisors, whoever, whoever they are, and they don't see themselves. Mirrors are never held up to these folks. So they don't understand that they're not hiring enough Asian Americans. They don't, because, those are model people. They don't have issues, they don't have problems. So, and this is all just embedded in how they think, how they direct, and how they dictate what you're going to be able to do next. very frustrating.
Yeah, and I've actually heard from the human resources in the county where they say that there's a pattern of when Asian Americans move up to the upper management level,
Should be a
start
ceiling.
bringing in a lot of grievances and people leave the county
Yeah.
for that. And so there is a persistent pattern of it that's observed and it's very clear that there's something going on.
And it's shown across all mediums in our culture. That just what the films you just showed, with what's happening now with the presentations of film with Asians being represented, with Constance Wu, with her films, with Ali Wong, with a whole nother presentation and image is being brought forward, and it's not asking for permission from they to critique it prior to them bringing it out to the world. And it's happening with other cultures as well, with African American cultures. People are not asking for permission. They're also finding universal acceptance because these are universal portrayals of the human experience. And they're quality written and performed and presented. And that's basically what they don't want out there because it's competition to their established status quo.
It was without funding this research. So, there's a wider distribution of these
Yeah, it's happening everywhere, but in the end, I didn't realize, I'm not an academic, that it was happening in, the academics, in mental health facilities, yeah, I don't know.
And maybe even in like these like county systems, if you look at who's actually on top, like the diversity level just decreases as the higher up you go. Like
There's none.
way top. Yeah, but there's none at the top. It's all white people.
No women,
No women either.
yeah, I know that, yeah.
Do you have any thoughts on this? On the more structural level?
I do find the same problem with Asian Americans, and it's not because of the model minority or like, I think it's more cultural, that they're not going to admit to their mental health problems because they have suffered so much trauma that anybody would have anxiety, depression, panic attacks, whatever, because of what's happened to us. And then we pass it down intergenerationally because we're anxious and so paranoid, and we pass that down, and that affects our attachments to our children, and it just keeps going. And I would love to use positive psychology to treat this, but nobody sees this as a problem. Because I grew up as a Japanese American, where everybody in my entire, because this is a trauma that happened to everybody. And so I grew up with a whole community of mentally ill people who have been traumatized. And yeah, it's true. But nobody was saying, oh no, we're fine. No worries, we're going to just keep going. But there was this thing, like, we used to talk about the camps when I was a child. And I'm thinking of Girl Scout camps. What are you guys all talking about? But it was so shameful and so, they felt guilty that this happened, and it happened to them. They're the victim, but they felt guilty of it. I mean, it's so complicated. And it is a mental health problem, and it's a mental health problem that in my community, Japanese American, is pervasive, and it still is. And I worry about the families that have been separated, and where children have gone, the Latino families at the border in the frontier, and how they've been separated for months. And what are we doing? We're doing the same thing over and over again. And I think if we had owned up to our problems and made them much more public, maybe the government would realize that there's real danger doing this to children.